I always thought living in an apartment building in the middle of the city meant anonymity, a sea of faces you brush by every morning without ever really knowing who they are. And my building was full of people my age, but like most young professionals, we kept our heads down, earbuds in, and lives neatly separated. So it came as a shock when I discovered the girl who lived just 2 floors below me wasn't just some stranger I'd been ignoring all this time, but someone whose life was tied to mine. In a way I could never have imagined. Her name was Lily, though I didn't know that at first. To me, she was just the neighbor with the big plants on her balcony, because every time I passed by her floor I saw them hanging there like a miniature jungle. She was quiet, with no loud music and no wild parties. Nothing to draw attention, just another ghost in the building like me, until one late Saturday morning when I carried a box of old books down to the lobby where our building had this free share shelf where people left things they didn't need anymore, and I figured someone might give my old mystery paperbacks a better home. That's when I saw her already standing there, turning over a small porcelain trinket box in her hands like it was made of gold. I glanced at it because it looked familiar, a little too familiar, with delicate rose patterns on the lid and a slight crack along the side. My grandmother had one exactly like that when I was a kid, and she used to keep her sewing needles in it. My chest tightened as I remembered sitting by her side watching her fix my torn jacket with a smile, and without thinking I muttered that my grandma used to have one just like that. She turned, and for the first time I really looked at her, chestnut brown hair tucked behind one ear and soft eyes that widened with surprise. She said I must be kidding because her grandma gave this to her and said it came from one of her closest friends years and years ago, and I blinked, feeling something stir as I asked what her grandma's name was. She hesitated, holding the box tightly, and said Margaret. Everyone called her Maggie, and my throat went dry because my grandma was Evelyn, who had told me all my life that she once shared a matching pair of trinket boxes with her best friend before life pulled them apart. Lily stared at me, then back at the box, and whispered that maybe our grandmothers were best friends, and in that silent lobby neither of us moved as reality settled in, the odds too impossible to ignore. So we sat in the chairs with the trinket box between us, and for the next hour we swapped stories, mine about Evelyn, who was nurturing and steady with tea and old-fashioned advice. Hers about Maggie, who was fiery and adventurous and once skipped school to hop a train to the coast just to see the ocean. Complete opposites who somehow completed each other. Lily showed me a photo scanned on her phone, black and white, slightly faded, of 2 teenage girls standing arm in arm laughing at something off frame, and my breath caught as I recognized my grandmother next to Maggie, radiating joy. And that night I dug through boxes of family albums until I found another snapshot of the 2 of them dressed up for some party, and couldn't wait to show Lily. Over the next weeks we started meeting up, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by accident, lingering in hallways, talking in the mailroom, walking to coffee shops, and the bond between our grandmothers felt like a bridge pulling us closer, and as I listened to her I realized how much she reminded me of the stories about Maggie, with restless energy and a way of telling stories that made you feel inside them, with dreams of becoming a travel photographer, fears of settling too soon, a love of old records and handwritten letters, and I found myself laughing more than I had in years. People in the building noticed, our landlord teased us about dating, and we laughed it off, though the thought was already lingering in both our minds. And then one night after coffee she invited me in and showed me a stack of letters tied with ribbon that Maggie had kept all her life, written by Evelyn through decades of distance, pages filled with family joys, disappointments, and reminders of how much she missed her best friend. And one line in looping neat handwriting stopped me cold. Even if life takes us apart, I hope one day our families find each other again, because what we shared should never be lost. And as I looked up, Lily was staring back with the same expression of shock and comfort, as if we were both realizing we had stumbled into something orchestrated long before we were born. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was something deeper, and over the next months our lives intertwined, dinners together, books exchanged, long city walks, arguments too, about silly things and serious things, fears of moving too fast or not opening up enough, but always coming back stronger, as though that invisible thread between Evelyn and Maggie tugged us forward. We took a trip to our hometowns, visiting the church where they met, the diner where they sat for hours, the park where they exchanged trinket boxes, leaving flowers at each stop and feeling their presence. And on the last night under a canopy of stars, Lily pulled the box from her bag and said it was almost like they wanted this for us to find each other, and I couldn't speak as my chest ached under the weight of history and new beginnings, so I simply took her hand and she didn't pull away, and we sat until dawn with the quiet certainty that whatever this was it mattered. Looking back now I marvel at the strangeness of fate, two young people living in the same building blind to each other until a porcelain box opened the door to the past, two grandmothers whose friendship reached across decades to nudge us into each other's lives, and I wonder how many other stories are out there hidden between strangers, waiting to be uncovered, and I feel grateful because sometimes the universe doesn't shout, it whispers through the people who came before, guiding us toward the ones we are meant to find, and for Lily and me that whisper was enough.